Hello, we're back. We're answering your comments and theories that a lot of you left on the Venture Brothers timeline video that we released a couple weeks ago. We got a lot of people saying that they wanted a kind of follow-up video now that the movie has aired and has kind of shifted a lot of things in the Venture universe. So I figured I'd go through, read a lot of comments, talk about things I got wrong. I got a lot wrong, maybe not a lot, but then also reading your theories and answering questions. I should say that I am not affiliated with the show in any way. I am just answering based off of my knowledge of the show, what I've read in the book, the commentaries, similar to the last video, and now also filling in gaps with what we learned from Radiant is the Blood of the Baboon Heart. First off, I want to address the multiple people who have been asking where I got my Gargantua 2 hoodie. Unfortunately, for the people who want to buy it, I don't believe it's available anymore. It went on the Astrobase Go website back in 2015, right before the special aired, and I jumped on it. And I have since looked, and I can't find it on eBay. It's not on the Titmouse website anymore. It's kind of doesn't exist anymore. So it's if you didn't get it, then I'm sorry. You're not getting this one. I don't know what to tell you. Tim the Skeptic 1147 writes, "How dare you not use the Helper drinking straw while drinking Docktails? Granted, I never cut apart my Venture Brothers action figures to make it, but I'd at least Google and print out the pieces." I guess fair. I mean, if you're not gonna do it, I'm not gonna do it. This is my own personal Monarch signed by Jackson and Mike Sinter-Nicholas, and it does have the part 3 of 6 of the Helper straw on the back that is fun and reasonably challenging. Uncanny Girl writes, "Following the series conclusion movie, 1. There's no guarantee that Rusty died, as the clone referenced by Helper Model 2 could be, and in parentheses extremely likely, Malcolm." Very good point. Number 2, Force Majeure's wife's noted dates need to be added. I agree, but there's not really much to go on because Bobby herself doesn't include the dates. She says 1960, I rather not say, I believe is the quote. I'll put it right here.
The year was 19, I'd rather not say.
Probably guess that it is at least maybe 1968, if not 1969, just based on Jonas being on the lot and talking to Stanley Kubrick, who is apparently working on faking the moon landing just based on the astronaut actors who are behind Jonas and him on the lot. I have a lot of things that I wish I included, and one of them was the addition of Follow That Bikini, which doesn't ever get a full mention until the movie. I believe it's in the commentary for The Doctor Is Sin.
Jonas Venture was the science consultant on the set of a horrible 60s movie called Follow That Bikini, about an invisible woman, and he was there to tell
I can barely follow what you're saying, so I am so glad that you cut all this stuff out.
Then also, Serena is watching Follow That Bikini in season 6. I forget which episode, but she's definitely watching it. And so I wish I had made a mention of it, but it was a movie that was never discussed outside of commentary, or if you tweeted at Jackson Public and asked if it was Follow That Bikini that Serena was watching. What Goes Down Must Come Up in season 3 reveals that Jonas Sr.'s video education machines are capable of picking up VH1 classics. This implies how Hank knows pop culture references that he should not know, as stated in the first episode. This is now vital to the plot as it explains Hank's coma knowledge. It also explains the mix-up with who Hank thinks is his mom. Yeah, I don't think there's anything ever mentioned that the boys' beds, which run off, I guess, the kind of same technology of the educational tapes in the bunker, also get VH1, but that would make sense that I believe Brock says it's like he channels dead crazy people. So if Hank is somehow getting VH1 classics and Dean isn't, that wouldn't be surprising. It kind of explains the mix-up, but also not, just because I believe the Action Man is the one who tells Hank that Bobby St. Simone was his mother, and he is not a trusted source of information for many reasons. There's a lot of versions of this that are questions and answers and theories and all this. I'm going with Bruce Cunningham 1158. When did YouTube start adding numbers to like everyone's names? Bruce Cunningham asks, but didn't Rusty die as a kid, meaning that it's possible that the OG didn't have a twin inside of him, that his brother is actually just a deformed clone of him? This is my theory going forward, because a lot of people are saying that Doc couldn't have died, explain why JJ is there. As we learn from the Dean clone, D19, in season 4, we see that the cloning technology does have aberrations and does have anomalies, and things can go wrong. So JJ may be a deformity that was a result of the cloning process. It's hard to say. over Starter in response to Doc and Sky, the woman that he says he's going to have a child with. Wouldn't that be a fourth child, Hank, Dean, and Dermot, or do you Hank and Dean count as one? I was counting Hank and Dean as like his legitimate sons, and then every other kid as a bastard, which is not right for me to do, but that is how it was. So yes, would be his fourth child. I guess I was counting Hank and Dean as one. Oh, this one I love. This is from Sorry if I butcher your handle. At Schizo Idea writes, shouldn't the pirate captain and his crew starting their act be dated rather around 2001 to 2002? Pirate Captain watched and loved Degrassi, 2001. That would mean they're at sea for about 2 to 3 years before their first appearance. Nailed it.
Captain Cuckoo here named his boat after Manny Santos on Degrassi.
So he didn't get lost at the start of the 90s. They probably got lost sometime in 2001 to 2002. Really good pickup. J. For Marat 1274. Come to think of it, it is entirely possible that Jonas did indeed kill Blue Morpho and his wife. After all, this is of course a guy who is well known for being a horrible father and a terrible person. For all we know, Blue Morpho may have ultimately gotten tired of being forced to do Jonas's dirty work, or may have even tried to inform the public about how horrible Jonas' venture really was, which then made Jonas outraged either for going against him or for trying to inform the public of how he was really a horrible person, which would then likely either ruin his reputation or get him arrested or even executed, which then motivated him to kill the Blue Morpho and his wife to prevent that from happening to him. That's kind of my theory too, is that Jonas, as it's shown, gets kind of bored easily and really has no loyalty except to, it seems to be Colonel Gentleman and the Action Man. We see Blue Morpho getting angry at him in Arrears in Science, and he talks about how Kano was stolen from him and his life was essentially ruined thanks to Jonas's actions. So it wouldn't surprise me if Jonas tampered with their plane and caused them to crash just simply to just flex his power. Just had some, like, just maybe felt that Morpho was getting out of hand or couldn't control him anymore. And also free money. The guild had a hit out on Blue Morpho, so it's like, oh, I can just collect more money by killing this guy who I pretend to be my friend. Okay, this is a huge one that a lot of people made comments about, and then I have gotten wrong. This is from Illier1. Small note, I'm pretty sure Rocket isn't Venture's kid. It's Professor Impossible. I'd be super impressed if they could detect a pregnancy like 2 days after conception. LOL. I probably botched this, most likely. There's no confirmation in any of the commentaries or in the book who Rocket's real father is. Granted, the joke and everything in the episode Ice Station Impossible doesn't work out for my theory that Rocket is Doc's son. I was just kind of going based off that Rocket has similar hair to Doc Venture, and then in 20 Years to Midnight, Doc makes a comment of,
you know how clingy old Skullface over there can get, and I likes my independence.
In regards to Sally and Rocket, which kind of hints that he may have been the biological father, but the urine sample in Ice Station Impossible and pregnancy detection, all that, doesn't really add up. I mean, that's an L on my part, and I also was going with that just based off the fact that Doc apparently dips in and out of women's lives and never for the better. Timelapse Prince writes, I've always chalked the fuzzy spots in the timeline up to unreliable memories of those narrating the stories told in flashbacks. Almost all of them are being told from the perspective of someone or another's memories. True. I think I include in the video as well, Doc Hammer mentions in the book that the characters in the show all have terrible memories. It's just everyone is always recounting things incorrectly or wrong, so which it's like also harder to try and do a timeline of this when every character, when they're telling a story about the past, most of the time it's usually not correct. A perfect example of this is in season 2 in Victor Echo November, when the boys, or everyone, is essentially talking about how Phantom Limb actually got his limbs and his powers, and Billy doesn't even remember how he got his hand at that episode. So yeah, really good point that a lot of the stuff in the show is kind of up for consideration since so many characters have terrible memories on the show. Osiris Atot19 writes, I think you forgot to explain the problem light started blinking. Which was also because of Rusty. True. In Careers in Science, both Careers and Arrears. So in Careers in Science, we see the problem light for the first time, and it turns out, or at least Doc believes, the reason the problem light is going off is because of the plastic cowboys he left behind as a child. And then in season 7, it's shown that Jonas came back online sometime maybe in the early 2000s when the boys got to Gargantua 1 for the first time, and he tried communicating with them in Morse code. There's no real answer about why Jonas came back online. I think he just did one day. Like he says in when he's talking to Blue Morpho that it was dark, incredibly dark, and then he came back online and we see Bud Manstrong for a moment, and then the boys. The Killer Stove writes, while I could totally see Jonas shooting down the plane, I'm still of the opinion that it was the Sovereign. As for why, I believe that Malcolm's mother was force majeure. Not true! We learned she's not. I'm not dunking on you. This is a theory that has been floating around forever. And the assassination was a power play on the Sovereign's part to assume control of the guild. Admittedly, this is really only based on Force Majeure's disappearance from the timeline, roughly matching up with the plane crash, and the fact that Meteor Majeure has taken a more prominent role in the past few seasons where we explored Malcolm's past. Yeah, all good points. I think we both know that Force Majeure was his own villain and was the Sovereign of the guild until he was killed by the villain who would then go simply as the Sovereign. TK9102 says, now that the movie wrapped up a lot of plot lines, would you be interested in making an updated definitive timeline video? That's kind of what this is. The movie is very good and it answers like two really big questions. Why does Malcolm hate Dr. Venture and everything that's tied up in that? We'll get to that eventually. And also, who is the mother of the boys? So we get both of those answered. The timeline itself doesn't really shift that much. There's probably a few more additions that I would add in. Like I stated previously, the inclusion of Bobby St. Simone and Follow That Bikini with Jonas and his invisible technology, and then drafting her into the OSI to go undercover against Force Majeure and then becoming Madame Majeure. That's all kind of within the late 60s into probably late 70s. The other thing we can add to the timeline is that when Force Majeure was Sovereign of the Guild, the Council of 13 consisted of Red Mantle and Dragoon, who we see in that flashback from the movie, as well as Crimodile, and also Vigo von Hellstorm, who is the father of Victor von Helping from season 7. We know that the boys are probably born sometime in the 1980s, based on the fact that Bobby St. Simone and Debbie go to him for help getting rid of her invisibility powers, giving them to Debbie, and then Debbie lending Doc her frozen eggs to help give birth to the boys.
And I gave him my stuff I wasn't planning on using.
Hunter Davis 3477 writes, The Venture Brothers is a storytelling masterpiece to me. One thing I'm not sure if it was mentioned, but I believe there is a possibility that Dr. Quim is also a biological child of Jonas Venture Sr. Likely. A lot of people have posted this theory that Dr. Quim might be a half-sister or a biological child of Jonas Venture Sr. Very, very likely. We don't know much about Miss Quim, who's her mother, who's inspired by Emma Peel from the Avengers, the British Avengers. Same thing with Colonel Gentleman. There is no confirmation on that in the book or in any commentaries. Throw a likely up there. Shoegazed writes, I always thought Doe and Cardholder's characters were meant to be direct hat tip to the detectives in the movie Barton Fink. Same double act pattern. Yes, you're absolutely correct. I didn't include that. That was on me. Straight from Jackson's mouth that they are inspired also by the two detectives at the end of Barton Fink, who John Goodman kills. Hugh Man 484 writes, I had a horrible theory after watching this. Jonas and the Sovereign have been in cahoots since the 70s, using the assassination of the Blue Morpho to launch his villainous career and play both sides of the conflict with Jonas. Of course, like everything in this awesome TV show, it just makes more questions. The details surrounding the specifics of Jonas's death could have tied into it and left the Sovereign holding the bag, or maybe he was making his own play with the investors. Maybe. Hard to say. From the movie, we learned that Force Majeure was Jonas's archenemy, who we've never seen him actually have an arch, really. Dr. Z has always kind of floated around, but as not his arch enemy, not like a Monarch to Doc Venture kind of deal. We do know that the Sovereign had a deal with the investors in All That in Gargantua 2 that he was looking to welch on, but yeah, maybe. Jonas seemed to have a lot of things going on. From Mando Diaz 7647, Triana's friend was also in Assassin Nanny 911, specifically in the pool scene. Triana asked if her and her friend can use the pool. I'm gonna assume you were just listening to the video, which is totally fine, just based on the fact that this graphic is shown when I mentioned Kim. she doesn't have really anything else to do with the show, and I know a lot of people in the comments were like, why isn't there more about Kim? Because there's literally nothing more about Kim. She never becomes a supervillain, or at least we never see her become a supervillain or a henchman. Like, and Doc and Jackson have stated, like, we don't care about Kim. Like, she doesn't exist. She's not a part of the show anymore. So all the people who are upset that I didn't include more about Kim, I don't know what to tell you. The show didn't, so I didn't either. Nathaniel Fort 7788 writes, I'm surprised that you didn't touch on the events of All That and Gargantua 2 more, and the killing of the Council of 13. I really wanted to, especially All That and Gargantua 2, because so much gets like tied up in that sense. Like the investors are wiped out, Zero gets killed, Traister dies after getting found out in space. You get some beautiful moments between Dean and Doc Venture. It would have been such a longer video, and I know people are like, this could have been longer. It was already pretty long. And then also the killing of the Council of 13 is a lot to go into, because it's like death of Steppenwolf and I think Wild Fop and all of these characters. I would love to do a video just doing all the references, even the names of villains and what they're references to. That would be so fucking much, and I don't know if you would want to watch that. If more than 500 people watch this video, I don't know, maybe I'll do it. Oh, I love this one. Mr. Ian Jester writes, because I'm a nerd and enjoy being that guy, I have to point out one quibble with the timeline. Chester Ong was using the shark from Damien Hirst's The Physical Impossibility of Death in the Mind of Someone Living in the molecular redistributor, so he couldn't have become Widewell until sometime after 1991. True. Incredible Damien Hirst art pickup. I didn't even recognize that upon first watch. You're absolutely right. The giant shark display you see Chester and Douglas using is Damien Hirst, The Physical Impossibility of Death in the Mind of Someone Living. This is a long one from Blood Moon Comics 2249. My only issue with the timeline is how the show came out in 2003 and ended around 2018, but time passes slower. People are not aging 15 years. It seems like the boys' age only changed by a few years. Since they were 16 in the start and ended, they were only about 19-ish in the end, and even cloning time, they would be around 21, since Rusty didn't wait too long to bring the boys back. Of course, cloning makes it harder to set, but the others are not aging at all. None of them look any different within the show. That makes modern timeline confusing and looking back a bit off, because it was 20 years ago versus it was 35 years ago, a lot different. The 2003 of it all is in terms of events in the show, is kind of hard to quantify. There is a lot of fuzzy spots on this timeline. I admit. I'm working with what was given, what the show put out there, and based on the dates. But the boys, again, we don't know how old the boys actually are. If we're going by the calendar now and how things work out, the boys would be close to 30. If not already in their 30s, but they're clones and they keep dying. And we also don't know how long in between Doc bringing back the boys. We see in the start of season 2 that he goes on his whole dead son sabbatical that he takes, where he goes to the mountains and smokes opium and hangs out in the jungle recreating Duran Duran videos. Maybe there's more time in between him bringing the boys back. Maybe he likes to cut loose and have a year off. The House of Fail writes, I have always believed that Rusty was a clone of his father. That's why we never hear who his mother is. Jonas already had the machines and just kept making new clones when the old ones failed. Which is how we got Jonas Jr., who clearly has stronger genetics to Jonas. I don't think the genetics part is correct, since JJ dies from what appears to be cancer. I mean, we know for a fact, spoiler, that the Monarch is a Rusty clone.
I swear we should have expected this.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting this.
But with a little bit of baboon blood in him.
2%. I told Jonas don't put that monkey junk in there. It'll make him more aggressive, but did he listen?
Stick with me on this. He never told anyone, so he invented the machines out of grief for Rusty. I also always thought that was why he dehumanized Rusty as well. To Jonas, Rusty was a failed experiment to create a legacy, either through a son, or perhaps it was always a test to see if the bodies were viable in the long term. And his education bed invention was a way to see if Jonas could live forever by creating new bodies and programming his memories into them. But he died before completing the plan and got stuck in the machine on Gargantua 1. And everyone just chalked it up to him being a typical distant but controlling father for the time period, so they never noticed anything was off. Yeah, Jonas is a terrible father. I do believe Rusty died at one point and then was clone and brought back, which possibly could have led to JJ. I think the dehumanizing of Rusty, and this goes into my like bigger theory of why I don't think Rusty is kind of like an extension of Jonas. Because if Jonas was such a great super scientist, then why didn't he go in and fix the DNA of Rusty before he was born? Why didn't he like CRISPR that up and get like the son that the super scientist thought he should have? Like, he clearly had some pretty good handle on technology, more than his son.
Other than a pinch of baboon DNA we spliced into R22 to counteract the premature balding, they're identical.
My guess is that Rusty was born out of wedlock to someone we'll never see or a character we'll never hear of. I mean, especially now because the show's done. And Jonas jumped at the chance of having a son because it probably played well in the media.
What is your greatest invention?
Well, Dick, those are both excellent questions, but I'm afraid I only have one answer. My son.
That's honestly why I believe he kept Rusty around for so long. Just based on the fact that he doesn't really seem like the type of guy who would want children around unless it was like forced upon him or he saw some kind of way to advance his image. I love this. I love this one. From Zarkana. So one thing I didn't see get know that when Dr. Z and the Blue Morpho is that he may or may not have encountered the Blue Morpho, given even Z seems confused as to how Blue Morpho did the illusion. But in this era in which a shape-shifting sovereign is running around, there's a distinct possibility that recounting was a false flag for reasons unknown by the sovereign. I can see how that completely plays out. The theory that the Blue Morpho we see in 1976 in Singapore isn't actually the Blue Morpho, but it is the Sovereign, based on the fact that Blue Morpho was disguised as Billie Jean King and was able to have sex with Dr. Z. So the idea that it could be the Sovereign, who is a shapeshifter, doing that to destabilize the guild, which honestly does kind of line up with what we see in the movie of the Sovereign killing Force Majeure. Yeah, honestly, a great theory. Repossesses Duras writes, now that you've done a Venture Brothers timeline, you gotta do a Metalocalypse timeline episode. Possibly, I'm not gonna say probably, possibly. I really love Metalocalypse, and I kind of fell off in the last few seasons. I know there's a movie happening, I believe there is. That one's also got, that show's got a crazy, weird lore behind it all, and also like just spans decades and decades and decades. Yeah, maybe. I'll put that as a maybe. Everyday Legend writes, the TVC-15 is another Bowie reference, as the song TVC-15 comes off the album Station to Station. Correct. I did miss that one. A lot of people wrote about TVC-15. I missed it. The thing I'm most happy about is I haven't seen a single comment that anyone mentioning that I misspelled reference in the Bowie reference counter. Right here, I misspelled reference. So, thank you for not bringing that up. The Real Caudill writes, when was Kissinger a war criminal? Didn't mean to include that Chiron, but it did stay in. I thought I had deleted it. If this is a genuine question, Google Henry Kissinger and Cambodia. Are you a former Nixon staffer? Get out of our comments section. A.W. Gates, 85, writes, I thought Sovereign got accidentally shot down when he was escaping, shapeshifted as a bald eagle. Correct. Headshot kills the Sovereign. Think that happens after I included the part that the Sovereign was on the lam, and I should have included that the Sovereign does die.
Nice.
And I also got mixed up with Tiny Eagle, who also does die. But don't blame Tiny Eagle. You got a lot of A's and N's in your name, so it's like trying to spell banana, sorry. Okay, so now we finally know. Force Majeure kidnaps the Boys Brigade. Unnamed Boys Brigade member decides he wants to be the next guild sovereign, gives himself shapeshifter powers, hostile takeover of the guild, starts the Pyramid Wars, and is killed accidentally while in the form of an eagle. I don't know if Philip Bloom did all that. I don't think he does. Jackson Furlong 3757 writes, Rusty Venture likely died after his month spent adventuring with, it's Hector, not Haji, since he doesn't remember them as an adult. Basically, this person is saying that Rusty probably died a few months after after Hector is kidnapped by Jonas Sr., and that's why he doesn't remember him in season 2 when he sees him in the lab. Very possible that Rusty was on an adventure and then got shot in the head by a man dressed as a Yeti and then brought back later and has no memory of Hector whatsoever, despite Hector having lived on the compound for what appears to be years.
Who is Hector Molina? And why do they keep sending me his junk junk mail!
Ooh, this is a good one in relation to the Brock timeline around college. Joseph Hardin 5592 writes, Brock was lying. He was already in OSI when he beat up Rusty and the gang. He just got kicked off of the Rusty's blanket assignment for what he did and being too interested in banging co-eds when he realized how boring it was. It would explain why he's at the Goodwill Games in 1986 and is facing off against Molotov in France sometime around 1984, 1985, that he was already undercover. Dr. O didn't curse the action man with a stroke. He just predicted when and how he would die. Yeah, the movie me on that one. I had always assumed since he was a necromancer and throughout the show has shown no ability to predict the future or any kind of clairvoyant like abilities until the movie when I think the line is like, magic guy.
You have come to seek my aid in locating your brother.
Yes, how'd you know that?
Oh, you know, magic guy.
And that he's able to tell the future now, so Orpheus could have absolutely been predicting the Action Man's stroke and not cursing him with it. Yeah, that's on me. From Liz Real Girl Beauty, I kind of judge you guys for not inserting shore leave saying Sphinx every single time it's brought up. I should have. That's a good call. I really should have. He is one of my favorite characters on the show. I absolutely should have.
Ta-da! Genital formal wear. I'm ready.
Michael's Chupak 9411 writes, damn, all those music references explicated and you jump right over the jams at Town Called Malice. I cut out so many music references from this video because it would have made it probably 20 to 30 minutes longer if I included all of the band and music references that the show has. So I'm just gonna read a handful of the ones I cut out. The Damned, Led Zeppelin, The Jam, King Crimson, Lydia Lunch, Duran Duran, Technotronic, Aquagen, Roxy Music, Devo, Yaz, The Crusaders, The Talking Heads, Arrested Development, The Art of Noise, The Prodigy, Republica, The Sugar Cubes, Yes, Adam Ant, The Velvet Underground and Nico, Queen, and The Rolling Stones. And there's so many more music references throughout the show. I could do a whole episode just based on references. Noble Deadman writes, still, will we ever learn why Monarch wants to kill Venture? We do. The movie finally has an answer to that. The Monarch was dating Debbie St. Simone, who is Mantilla, that we see in the movie. And after the breakup, Monarch believes that Doc Venture slept with Debbie, and that seems to be kind of like the real genesis of the hatred over Doc and why he wants to kill him.
Why did you Debbie?
Debbie? Debbie who?
Debbie St. Simone! She was my girlfriend!
Debbie from 20 years ago, Debbie? We never vodeo-do-doed.
Patrick Hamos writes, Jonas Venture was not a piece of shit, as you say. He was the greatest super scientist playboy of all time. He was the greatest person of all time. This is like the John Gotti, like, what about the murders response.
He was the best guy around.
What about the people he murdered?
What murder?
Drew Thompson writes, I understand you were under pressure, but how did you not bring up Mr. Fahrenheit properly? Mr. Fahrenheit, the Supersonic Man, I believe he's a Flash-powered speedster that looks exactly like Freddie Mercury. That's all we get of him. He's only in one episode, and he doesn't talk. Joseph Baca 5214 writes, Meteor Major is a direct copy of a Doctor Who Tom Baker episode. It's exactly the same. Sure, I'm not seeing a single episode of the Tom Baker Doctor Who. I'll post a thing of Kyle Anderson here talking about it.
So if the commenter is saying what I think he's saying, he's referring to Shada, which was an unfinished, unbroadcast Doctor Who story from the late 70s, which was actually written by Douglas Adams of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, who was the script editor on Doctor Who there for a while. But it's become infamous in fan communities because it's the great lost Doctor Who story. But if this is what Jackson and Doc were referring to, that is a deep cut Doctor Who reference. And good for you, commenter, for finding it.
Jinx D420XXX7. No one ever goes into depth about why Brock stops killing people. We had the moment with Orpheus, but still. Brock never stops killing people. I'm guessing you're probably referencing season 2 episode Viva Los Muertos. I mean, I'll just do a quick little compilation of Brock kills post season 2 right here. So yeah, he doesn't stop killing people. I do love that Brock becomes more of a very, very sympathetic character as the show progresses, especially in Operation Prom. The Operation Prom is maybe my favorite Brock moment of the show. Zach Webb writes, Scare Bear, Kim, what about Doc and Billy using a time machine? Doc and Billy using a time machine, I have no answers to. They apparently go 70 million years back in the past and Doc loses a finger. That's all we're really given. Scare Bear, we never got an answer. Scare Bear just appeared one day. I believe his first appearance is in Bright Lights, Dean City. There's so many theories on Scare Bear. As for who he might be, I don't think he's a time traveler. I don't really have a Scare Bear theory. He's kind of like Uatu the Watcher in a sense, in a weird way. He does interfere, but he just kind of is always hovering. Ooh, this is one that a few people have commented on. Anime Dingo says, I never thought the prom prostitutes were actual Blackhearts. I think that was a bluff. I don't think so. I think they were Blackhearts, and I believe they are, and the reason why we never see them again, / why Molotov goes off to be with Monstroso and then eventually OSI, is because all of the Blackhearts get transformed into fly monsters because of Doc's Spanish fly. G-Cell10 writes, there is so much wrong with the timeline explanation. Thank you. Blue Morpho's plane crash couldn't have been after Rusty's 16th birthday because Rusty was definitely not a teenager when Venturian tried to strangle him. The movie adds more context that changes this video a lot. Yeah, there's some context that changes a lot of things. Not in this regard though. There's no real mention of the Blue Morpho at all in the movie. And yeah, Rusty should be 16 at this time in the timeline, based on quotes from Dr. Z,
Summer of 77,
Phantom Limb,
1976,
and also Venturian's POV. We see 1976 throughout that whole scenario. Like we said earlier, a lot of these characters have bad memories. So it could be the Action Man and all of them just horribly remembering what happened. Or maybe the Rusty we see getting strangled is a Rusty clone that has now aged up to a proper age that would make more sense for him to be in college in 1986. And that's about it in terms of comments. Shout out to all the people posting Go Team Venture in the comments, and for all the love, theories, I love them, keep posting them. But tell me, what do you think? Is there a show or movie with extremely complicated lore that you would love a deep dive on? And what did you think of Radiant as the Blood of the Baboon Heart? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching again, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, stay tuned to Nerdist.com.